Okay, hello everyone. It is my pleasure to announce our speaker today, Rahul Shome. Rahul is currently a postdoctoral researcher at Rice University, where he works in the group of Lydia Kavraki. And before joining the Kavraki lab, he did his master's and PhD in computer science at Rutgers University, where he worked with Kostas Bekris. And Rahul has published extensively in the area of rearrangement planning and also in multi-robot motion planning. And he recently published a very nice work on the discrete RT star algorithm, which is, at least for me, a really elegant way to decompose and then optimally solve a multi-robot planning problem. But I think he will dive deeper into that in his talk. And finally, I'd like to mention that his work so far also won a Best Paper Award at the International Symposium on Multi-Robot and Multi-Agent Systems in 2017. And he was nominated for the Best Paper in Automation Award at ICRA 2019. And I'm therefore really happy that he accepted our invitation, and I'm really looking forward to his talk today. Here he is, Rahul Shome.
Thank you for that amazing introduction, Andres. So I'll share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it. Is this visible?
Yes, perfect.
All right. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, and I'll be talking about kind of things of mutual interest, right? So we want to kind of investigate structures and nice theoretical guarantees in robotics problems. And the broad strokes of that would entail multi-robot problems or task and motion planning problems. And yeah, I'm not going to go over the introduction again because Andreas already spoke about it. But yeah, the only thing I'd like to mention is one of the very few times I managed to go to campus, I encountered a very bright Texas morning, and that was one of the pictures of the computer science department, which you see in my background. And if you need to ever contact me, you can always reach out to me over email, and you can also visit my personal website. So diving straight in, the core problem that I'll talk about will always involve some sort of planning, which is all going to involve a start state and some sort of goal. And you will have a diversity of choices you have to reason over in order to attempt to reach the goal, right? And this set of choices will depend upon the capabilities of your robotic system and the kind of problem that you're trying to address. And with more capabilities, we'll have more choices and more power, but that also poses unique challenges and expresses different flavors of planning, right? And at a high level, the specific domains that I will touch upon in this talk will relate to multi-robot motion planning, task and motion planning, and problems with dynamics relating to kinodynamic planning. So what are the kind of challenges posed by these choices here? So in multi-robot motion planning, you have to reason about many robots, right? When you have many actions to solve a task, that falls into the domain of when you have task and motion planning. And when you have to control complex systems, that would be in the kinodynamics. And in each case, the key insight that I will always try to fall back on is it is always important to study the structure of the search space in order to derive efficient ways in which to either solve it outright or guide your solution. And this can give you efficiency, right? And once you get the solution, it is also important to kind of have the ability to describe some guarantees about what kind of solutions the algorithms can express. And the specific guarantee that I will talk about would be asymptotic optimality. And I will talk about it at the end of this discussion. And this kind of gives us the notion of reliability of your deployment of the robot, right? And the class of algorithms, planning algorithms that I'll discuss would be sampling-based planning algorithms. And that's where the kind of asymptotic nature comes from in the properties. I'm not going to go over why these things are important, right? We need in for effective deployment of robots, robots that are capable of planning for complex problems and to do so efficiently and reliably. And especially with like these increasingly remote applications that we are finding ourselves in, it seems important that we can push the boundaries of what we can make robots do. And in terms of the connections, like I definitely see a lot of overlaps in the guiding principles of some of the work I have seen from members of your group, right? And including the wonderful talk I heard from Andreas when he virtually visited our lab a few weeks ago. And I found this really cool video on Twitter, which he shared of these mobile arms doing construction problems, right? Which like I'm very excited about like learning about it at some point. Like, but yeah, it was. So I see a lot of overlaps in the similar inspection of structures and properties in these domains. So going straight into basically the first part, we're going to talk about multi-robot motion planning. So in multi-robot motion planning, I'm going to specifically look at the DRRT star algorithm. So for DRRT star, we are trying to solve the multi-robot motion planning problem by reasoning about all possible ways the robots can move. And this would be the set of choices that you have, right? Which complicates your search. And why is that? Because your search space, typically in sampling-based motion planning algorithm, which will have to reason about all your degrees of freedom, which describe a high-dimensional configuration space. And within that configuration space, the objective is to find a collision-free path that takes you from the start to the goal. And when you minimize some sort of cost in that space, it gives you the optimal solution. But theoretically, what we can guarantee in sampling-based methods is asymptotic optimality, where as the number of samples increases, you want to converge to the optimal cost solution. So what happens when you have many robots is the size of the search space grows exponentially, because each robot you add multiplies the dimension, right? So because of this explosion in the size of the search space, if you try to naively plan in that massive search space by, say, building a roadmap, which is a collision-free graph, right? Like a PRM. So if you try to build search structures, the solution will express exactly the ways each of the robots move in each of their slices. So you can see on the kind of the slices on the right represent how each robot moves in its own configuration space, but they all have to move together and they will interact with each other potentially. So you have to plan in the complete search space to provide guarantees. And because you have to deal with the complete search space, the efficiency of planning in that space is limited by the data structures that you need to build there. So because the space is exponentially larger, these data structures also need to be exponentially larger, and it becomes harder to store and search, if not impossible in some cases. And the key insight we draw from in that to combat this problem is we leverage this kind of line of prior work, which argued that such a space can be decomposed into a tensor product roadmap. So what is a tensor product roadmap? It's going to be a combination of nodes and edges of roadmaps you can build for each robot. So what does that structure look like? So let's take, for example, 3 roadmaps or graphs, right? And G1, G2, and G3. The node will consist of a combination of all these vertices, XU1, XU2, and XU3. So that forms a node of the tensor roadmap. Given such a node, you can also combine the neighborhoods, and you take all possible combinations of edges each robot can take to compose the tensor product neighborhood. And something that's very cool and exciting here is, if you know the original roadmaps, G1, G2, and G3, you can recover this connectivity in the tensor product space. You do not need to explicitly save this tensor product. And what this lets us do is, in this exponential space of all the robots, you no longer have to save an exponential data structure. You can only keep track of the individual roadmaps, and you recover the connectivity in the exponential structure. So that leads us to the design of asymptotically optimal kind of planning algorithm that can discover solutions on such tensor roadmaps. And something that also helps us is we can heuristically guide our solutions using information from these individual roadmaps, individual robot roadmaps. And this is kind of one of the experiments that we did. And it was so it involves like 4 robotic arms, right? Which is 28 degrees of freedom, and it's planning for all the degrees of freedom together. And there is kind of this pole-like obstacle in the middle. And all of these robots can collide with each other. So they have to reason about their motions, all combinations of these motions. And the reason we find these solutions is we are using this decomposition of the space in our search. And I believe like in this case, we found the solution in like on the order of a second. So like just to go back on what the key idea is in this search algorithm is, the first step is you look at each slice, where each slice is kind of each robot's configuration space. And you build a asymptotically optimal roadmap in that space. So what does that space describe? It describes self collisions of that robot and how it can avoid static obstacles. What it cannot describe is how it can avoid other robots or other dynamic obstacles that might arise later on in the scene. So, but what we can do beyond that is we can combine these roadmaps to implicitly describe a tensor roadmap structure in the composite space of the multi-robot system. And once we have a new motion planning problem where we have to connect the green point to the red point, we start building a optimal search tree outward by exploring edges on the tensor product roadmap. And we collision check these edges because we are not guaranteed anymore to avoid collisions with between robots, right? So we have to collision check edges. And we maintain an optimal structure by always ensuring that it's an optimal search tree. And we keep growing outward, and we will use a combination of exploration and exploitation. So what will the exploration and exploitation look like? So the exploration is kind of straightforward. You just need to select a random neighbor in your tensor roadmap. And the way you do that is you take random neighbors for each roadmap and you combine them. And that gives you the tensor vertex, which is also a random neighbor in the tensor neighborhood. For the heuristic bias, a nice property comes out. So you can actually use the optimistic solution of each robot to reach the goal as a very nice heuristic to guide all the robots, because that's in a way the best each robot can do. And interactions between the robots can only make it worse and make it deviate from the path. But what this means is in parts of the search space where interactions are not imposed, it aggressively makes progress towards a solution for each robot. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to also have certain like practical efficiency benefits when we try to discover these solutions. And because we are always maintaining an optimal search tree over this asymptotically optimal structure, we can also argue asymptotic optimality. So just to quickly go over, so I guess, yeah, like any questions at this point? Feel free to interrupt me at any point, like if you have questions, and we can definitely go back at the end of the talk as well. So just to briefly go over like some of the initial results that we got, right? When we when we compare against other methods, which are say the DRRT algorithm which is not asymptotically optimal, or a RRT star which is built in the complete composite space, it turns out that even for very simple toy problems where you have disk robots, but you just increase the number of robots, so you grow the size of the search space, the other methods, if you don't do this decomposition quickly, stop scaling. And if you don't use the guidance, you quickly stop finding solutions within a time limit. In this case, I believe the time limit was 30 seconds. And the idea is that this kind of decomposition seems to not only give us the effective guidance necessary, but also lets us preserve these theoretical properties, which is nice. Something else which you can do is, an interesting question arises. If you have complex systems, how do you decompose the space? So let's say in this case, it's a mobile bimanual manipulator, a Baxter, right? How do you, now it will have the mobile base and it will have both the arms. So it becomes an interesting question how you decompose the space effectively, and how can you still apply the same identical algorithm to find solutions effectively in this space. And yeah, it's not really visible properly, but the Baxter is holding two lightsabers in this video. Okay, so yeah, I hope I kind of motivated this already compelling benefit of leveraging structure, right, for ensuring efficient planning, which we have seen through the DRT star. Now, DRT star just gave us a tool to efficiently move many arms together. Now, what if we have to actually use those manipulators to perform interesting tasks? So that's where task and motion planning comes in. And the specific kind of task and motion planning that I'll discuss first would be multi-arm rearrangement. So what is object rearrangement specifically? It just deals with the problem of taking a set of objects from their initial poses to target poses. And what you have at your disposal would be a set of manipulation actions like picks and placements. And once you execute the sequence of picks and placements, you can find a solution. Now, the question that arises when you have multiple robots is, which robot is going to perform what action? So this is where kind of these choices come back in again. So now, not only do you have to reason about how the robots move, but you also have to reason about all possible ways the objects can be picked and placed, and all possible arms that can enact those actions. And this is kind of an instance of a task and motion planning problem, which has to operate in this combination of a discrete space of choices of actions and this continuous space of choices of geometric motions. And you have this interplay between these two layers. And the objective initially would be to find an effective structure in at least the space of actions that we can use to guide this complete search. So the first kind of problem we dipped our toes into was two-arm rearrangement. So what if you just have two arms? Let's start with that. Is there something, a cool structure that exists? So I won't spend too much time here because I want to quickly get into the multi-arm case, which is kind of really interesting. But just kind of a spoiler alert, right? We found that it does kind of decompose nicely into these very nicely separated sub-problems, primarily weighted edge matching and traveling CS person problem. And why is this good for us? Because both of these problems have polynomial time approximation solvers, right? So it has efficient solvers available. So what we can do is, by studying the structure of the space, we could find an effective guidance for identifying sequences of actions for two-arm rearrangement that can help us identify these solutions faster. And here you can see it does help, right? Like when you are trying to solve such a puzzle-like task with 2 arms instead of 1 arm. So let's head back into the key question, the multi-aspect of multi-arm rearrangement, right? So it's not just 2 arms. We care about multiple arms. So basically, you have an army of arms thrown into a scene, which is just doing crazy things with like all the objects around, and you have to move objects from one part of your workspace to another part of your workspace. So can we reason about all of these robots and actions together in trying to find solutions which can both be guided efficiently in the space of actions, as well as provide very good heuristics in the space of task and motion planning when you actually compute the motions for those actions. So here in this problem of like synchronized multi-arm rearrangement, we focus on just the actions, picks, placements, and handoffs. And for studying this problem, we impose that all these actions have to take place in like synchronized steps. And even with this assumption, it turns out like the number of choices you have is massive. It's going to grow like very quickly as you have these many robots and objects. So what we proposed is you can still find a structure in this space. And we call that structure a mode graph. And what will that graph look like for such a problem? The problem you see here is involves swapping two objects on these 2 tables using 2 manipulators. So the objects start off on one of the tables and they have to be moved to the other table. And you can already identify that if you do something naive, which is, okay, just go for the objects and try to hope for the best. You're going to pick both objects and then you won't be able to hand it off because both arms are blocked now, right? So you actually have to find a solution that does, that moves one object first completely and then goes for the other one. So the structure we create with this is a graph that first we add vertices which correspond to these manipulators, right? So each manipulator would be a vertex in our graph. Then we identify all the regions that we can perform placements. Each such region, so in this example, say the tables are also vertices in our graph. And the edges between these vertices now correspond to the domain of actions that we are interested in, which is picks, placements, and handoffs. So picks and placements would be edges between the arm and the placement regions, and edges between the arms would be handoffs. And you add the edges depending upon which of those are reachable and feasible. Once you have such a graph, the objects can be thought of as pebbles on this graph. So the objects start off on placement regions, initial placement regions. And the problem will tell you to move the objects to a different set of placement regions. So what this means is we can find a effective guidance for this multi-arm rearrangement problem by solving the problem of moving these pebbles over this graph. So you have to move the objects from the initial vertices to the final vertices. And the additional constraint that we have to add is each of these vertices now have capacities which dictate how many objects can interact with that part of the workspace. So a manipulator can only grasp one object at a time, at least in this example, right? So you have to impose those capacities. And if you respect that, a solution for the objects on this graph maps to a sequence of manipulation actions that can that is a feasible candidate for your multi-arm rearrangement solution. And effective mixed integer linear programs have already been kind of proposed for multi-agent pathfinding on a graph problems, and we modified them to incorporate these notions of capacities. And we've showed that if we plug this into a high-level search tree, which is doing task and motion planning, we can find solutions very effectively. And here you can see like a comparison with kind of sequential execution or greedy strategies, where you just greedily try to make progress for each arm. For simpler problems, everything succeeds, but we still manage to find solutions which have significantly fewer actions because you are leveraging the multi-robot aspect of the problem. And for harder problems where you can have those bottlenecks of swapping behavior, we actually maintain the success ratio, while being greedy actually hurts a lot if you try to solve it naively. And an interesting kind of result we also observed was it can actually deal with some versions of the problem which are typically considered harder, where you have to use intermediate buffers or intermediate placement locations to solve the problem, where you can see that the middle placement region had to be used for the white object in order to complete this swapping between the tables. So I'll quickly kind of try to hint at how we can guarantee some of the theoretical properties on top of these efficient structural guidances that we have described, right? So what are the theoretical properties we care about and how we can argue them in these planning domains? So firstly, in task and motion planning, what we have described are efficient ways to impose a structure on the space of actions. Now, if we have to look at the complete task and motion planning problem, how do we guarantee asymptotic optimality and what are the minimum conditions necessary for that? So first, we need to kind of describe what such a solution looks like, right? So it will involve, again, a start and a task goal. And along the way, you will pass through transition configurations. And these transition configurations are going to map to, say, grasping configurations or placement configurations in manipulation. And each segment here is going to be its own motion planning problem, where you're planning without the object maybe, or you're planning while grasping the object with a specific grasp. And at each point, you might have choices of grasps or placements or other transition configurations, which describes this kind of search space where you have to find sequences of transition configurations and motion plan between each of them, each pair of them, right? So what we showed is it seems that it's pretty straightforward to preserve this guarantee of asymptotic optimality in this space, as long as you build the search trees rooted at the start configuration and you keep sampling transition configurations from wherever you are. So from the beginning, you will place for a pick and place problem, you will sample your grasps. So for a manipulation problem, a transition configuration in this case might be a grasping configuration. Then in order to connect to these transition configurations, you need to kind of build a motion planning structure. So we analyzed growing asymptotically optimal roadmaps. And if you keep growing these roadmaps, eventually you're going to connect between these transitions and you're going to keep exploring newer transitions, and you will have a search tree across sub transitions till you reach your task goal, which is maybe you picked it up and you sampled a bunch of placements, then you placed the object and you achieved your final task and motion planning solution for manipulation. So as long as you ensure that you give enough attempts to the motion planning part, so you maintain asymptotic optimality there and you sample enough transition configurations at any point, you can like kind of carry forward the properties of asymptotic optimality of the motion planning part to the task and motion planning space as well. So it seems to be like not that hard to guarantee this, as long as you kind of stick to these very basic steps. Now an interesting byproduct comes here. So what are these transition configurations? I spoke about grasps and placements, right? And you can see in this figure, these kind of lie at the edge of the obstacle, right? So it's kind of the edge of your free space, because, I mean, it's easy to visualize a grasp or a placement necessarily comes into contact with something. So you're either making contact with the object or you're making contact with the placement surface. So it turns out that this kind of violates a lot this typically assumed imposed assumption in planning where you need clearances or you need to reason about the interior of your configuration space. And it turns out that even in very simple toy problems, as you can see on the right, where you have a gripper closing its fingers, you might have to reach points which are at irregular points on your boundary of the free space. So we showed that we actually do not really need this assumption in the space of task and motion planning, and the already described steps can handle the relaxation of this assumption as well, and it should just work out in like most typical scenarios. So this kind of gave us this nice wrapper around like all the efficient guidances that we were describing by kind of saying that it seems that it should also be possible to argue these nice theoretical properties on top of that. So once we have kind of gone through this gamut of multi-robot motion planning and task and motion planning, the question comes, are the only actions that you care about going to be fixed and placement? Or can we reason about more richer kinds of interactions or richer motions like dynamic behavior? And towards that end, I'm going to very quickly wrap up with this discussion over this new result in planning over bundles of edges, which can aid in kinodynamic planning. So what are the choices that affect you in this space? You have to reason about all possible ways a dynamical system can be controlled. And that lets us model tasks like pushing or throwing, right? Which can kind of enhance the capabilities of your robotic system. And one of the key challenges of planning in this space is you do not have what is called a steering function. So you're not guaranteed to be able to connect nearby states. A very standard example for this is, say, the parallel parking problem, where even if you are right beside the spot, that does not really guarantee that you can crab walk into it, right? So this kind of limits the applicability of like roadmap-based methods which need to connect neighborhoods. So what we propose is we will reason about these edges. So what's a kinodynamic edge? It will involve a source state. You have a control which evolves the state, right, over time. And if you have a duration along that edge, it tells you where you end up. So a source state, a control, and a duration are enough to describe an edge in the space. And once you sample a bunch of these edges, you can cover your collision-free part of the space with disconnected edges. Now, how can we use such a data structure to find efficient solutions online for motion planning problems? Because this is disconnected, right? This does not give you a solution to anything. So how can we reuse information from such a structure in this space? So the analog to connecting neighborhoods in a graph or a roadmap here would be you reuse the controls and durations of nearby edges. So given any point, if you describe a neighborhood, if you have collision-free edges starting in that neighborhood, you just propagate the same controls and durations, and that would be the analog of reusing the information that you already pre-computed for that neighborhood. So we just kind of devise this proof of concept implementation where you build a search tree over an increasing size of these bundles where you reuse information from constant neighborhoods of the search tree from the pre-computed collision-free edges. And it turns out using this pre-computation, which was erstwhile not really feasible in the kinodynamic domain, it lets you A, preserve asymptotic optimality, and B, lets you have a promising performance benefits because you can now increase the size of your pre-computation and then get benefits in terms of finding quicker solutions and better solutions. So yeah, like just to wrap up, basically, we touched upon this kind of diverse spectrum of planning problems where all of them underscore the importance of caring about the structure of the search space, as well as trying to understand the theoretical properties that can influence algorithmic design choices in each of those planning domains. And both of these go back to the original kind of motivation for preserving efficiency as well as reliability. Now, just to wrap up, I'm going to just thank all my collaborators, both from all my lab mates and my funding agencies. And you can definitely reach out to me again, either by email or and you can visit my website for more information about these papers. And while I take questions, I'll let this video run of some of the other threads which I did not touch upon in my work. Yeah, and they're just cool videos of robots doing things, I guess. So yeah. Like if you have any questions or any comments, like.
Cool.
Thank you very much.